You can't stay with me anymore, Kian. You have nothing. Those words came from my boyfriend Colson's mouth as I stood in his luxury penthouse, holding a simple gift box in my hands. I had remembered his birthday, spent 3 months of my salary buying him a watch, but Colson didn't even look at the gift. His eyes were on my worn jacket, my old sneakers, and then he looked at me like I was some kind of burden he couldn't carry anymore. Colson, I got this for you. I started, but he turned toward me with eyes that held no trace of the love that used to be there. You don't understand, Kian. My friends see you and think I'm running a charity case. You don't belong in this world. His voice lacked the tenderness it had during our college days, when he used to find me in the library, when he told me all he wanted was me. My heart shattered. 2 years. We had spent 2 whole years together, and now suddenly, like someone flipped a switch, Colson looked at me like a stranger. You're leaving me? Because I'm poor. My voice trembled, but I held myself together. Colson checked his expensive watch and gave me a cold smile, one I had never seen before. I'm showing you reality. You'll always be waiting tables, struggling to pay rent. And me? I'm moving forward. Not with you. He opened the door. Please leave. Kian, this is better for both of us. I placed the gift box on his counter and walked out without another word. Rain was pouring outside, but I couldn't feel anything, just an empty sensation, like there was a hole carved into my chest. Colson had only used me, kept me around as long as I was convenient, as long as his position in the family business wasn't secure. Now he would move on with some other wealthy boyfriend. And me? I would go back to my small world, alone and forgot. But when I reached my apartment gate, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, congratulations. You've been selected for the executive training program at Vanguard Enterprises. My hands started shaking. This was the company where I had interviewed 3 weeks ago, but I hadn't held any hope because the competition had been incredibly fierce. I stared at the screen, read the email again, and a strange smile crossed my face. Colson thought I would always stay beneath him, that I was nothing without him, but he was wrong. Let's see now, Colson, I whispered to myself, wiping away my tears. Let's see who actually has worth. That night I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop, typed a reply, and accepted the position. This was my fresh start, and I wasn't going to waste it. The rain kept falling as I sat by my window, looking out at the city lights blurred through the water streaming down the glass. For 2 years I had believed Colson when he said money didn't matter, that our connection was deeper than material things. I had worked double shifts at the restaurants, skipped meals to save money for our dates, worn the same 3 outfits on rotation because I wanted to make him happy. And what did I get? Humiliation. Rejection. A door slammed in my face, but something shifted inside me that night. The pain was still there, sharp and cutting, but beneath it was something else. Determination. I pulled out a notebook and started writing down goals. If Vanguard Enterprises was giving me this chance, I would seize it with everything I had. No more being the struggling boyfriend who couldn't afford nice dinners. No more apologizing for my background. I would prove to myself, and eventually to Colson, that I was capable of so much more than he ever imagined. My phone buzzed again. A text from my best friend Marcus. Hey, wanna grab drinks? I ignored it. I couldn't face anyone right now. Couldn't explain what had just happened. How do you tell someone that the person you loved looked at you with disgust? That the man who once held your hand in public now wanted you erased from his life? I walked to my tiny bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my hair was a mess, and I looked exactly like what Colson said, someone who didn't belong. But appearances could change. Circumstances could shift. And I had just been handed the key to transformation. The email from Vanguard sat open on my laptop screen, glowing like a promise. Executive training program. Those 3 words represented everything I had dreamed about but never thought possible. The program was known for being brutal, for pushing candidates to their absolute limits. Only 5 people were selected each year from thousands of applicants, and somehow I was one of them. I remembered the interview clearly. The panel had asked me tough questions about leadership, about handling pressure, about what drove me. I had been honest, perhaps too honest. I told them I wanted to prove that where you come from doesn't determine where you end up. That hard work and intelligence should matter more than connections and wealth. The lead interviewer, a sharp woman named Director Chen, had studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. Now sitting in my cramped apartment with Coulson's rejection still burning in my chest, I understood what had happened. They saw something in me that Coulson couldn't or wouldn't see. They saw potential. They saw someone hungry enough to fight for success. I made myself a promise right then. 6 months? I would give myself 6 months to transform completely. 6 months to become someone Coulson wouldn't recognize. Not for revenge, not really, but for myself, to prove that his judgment was wrong, that his superficial view of worth was meaningless. The rain finally stopped around midnight. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since leaving his penthouse, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. Coulson had closed a door, but in doing so he had forced me toward a window I never knew existed. Tomorrow I would start preparing. Tomorrow my real life would begin. And Coulson, he would become nothing more than a lesson learned, a painful chapter that taught me never to let someone else define my value. I closed my eyes and imagined walking into Vanguard's headquarters, wearing a suit that actually fit, carrying confidence instead of apologies. The image made me smile. Coulson wanted me out of his world? Fine. I would build my own world, one where he would never be able to touch me again. One where I stood tall, independent and untouchable. 6 months later I was a different person entirely. Vanguard Enterprises had rebuilt me from the ground up. Business strategy, management techniques, leadership principles, everything. I had worked day and night, turned every weakness into strength, sacrificed late nights and weekends without complaint. And now I wasn't just a trainee anymore. I was a department lead, someone the entire team respected and looked up to. My office had glass walls with a panoramic city view. My salary was something I had never dared to dream about. But most importantly, I was proud of myself. I had proven my worth without anyone's support, without needing validation from someone who thought I wasn't good enough. I didn't need Coulson. I didn't need his approval. This morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when my assistant Emily walked in. She was always punctual and efficient. Exactly the kind of professional I wanted on my team. "Sir, there's an orientation for new recruits today. You're scheduled to give the welcome speech," Emily informed me, extending her tablet to show the attendees list. I nodded. "All right, Emily, I'll be there in 5 minutes." I adjusted my tie and headed toward the conference hall. When I entered the hall, everyone stood up. There was a strange confidence flowing through me, something that had developed naturally over these 6 months. The fruit of genuine hard work. I stepped onto the stage, adjusted the microphone and scanned the audience, and suddenly my eyes locked onto one face. Coulson. He was here, right in front of me, sitting in the first row wearing a blazer, but his eyes didn't hold the arrogance he had when throwing me out of his apartment. His eyes showed shock, disbelief, as if he had never imagined this moment could possibly arrive. My heart raced, but I controlled my emotions perfectly. I smiled. Professional, measured, cold. "Welcome to Vanguard Enterprises," I began, keeping my voice steady. "Here we only value talent, not background. If you work hard and show dedication, you'll advance. If you don't, then this place isn't for you." Coulson stared at me, confusion and disbelief clearly visible on his face. He probably couldn't comprehend how the poor boyfriend he had discarded could now be his boss. Someone who would decide his professional fate. After finishing the speech, I started walking toward my office. But footsteps followed me, quick and desperate. "Kian, wait." I stopped. My hand was on the door handle, and for a second I considered ignoring him completely. But then I decided no, I wouldn't run from anyone anymore. I turned around. Coulson stood before me, slightly breathless as if he had run to catch up with me. How are you here?" he asked, his voice carrying a helplessness I had never heard before. I looked at him with a completely emotionless expression. "I work here, Coulson, and technically I'm your direct supervisor now. You've been assigned to my team." His face went pale, like he had seen a ghost. "Kian, I need to talk to you. Please, just 2 minutes." I opened my office door and walked inside without responding. "Sir, your morning coffee," Emily said, entering with a tray. I smiled. "Thank you, Emily. Also, please place the new recruit files on my desk." Coulson remained standing outside the doorway, his eyes clearly showing regret and desperation. But I didn't care anymore. Coulson had abandoned me when I was weak, when I was vulnerable. Now that I was strong, had a position, he wanted to come back. No. Now it was my turn to show him what rejection felt like. I spent the morning deliberately avoiding any personal interaction with him. During team assignments, I treated him exactly like every other new employee, courteous but distant, professional but cold. When he tried to linger after meetings, I always had somewhere else to be, someone else to see. The power dynamic had completely reversed, and I could see it eating away at him with every passing hour. During lunch, I ate in my office while reviewing performance metrics. Emily knocked and entered. "Sir, Coulson Reed has requested a private meeting with you. Should I schedule it?" I didn't look up from my documents. "Tell him to submit any concerns through the proper channels like everyone else." Emily nodded and left. Through my glass walls, I could see her delivering the message to Coulson, who stood near her desk. His shoulders slumped slightly, but he nodded and walked away. The afternoon brought a team meeting where I outlined our quarterly objectives. Coulson sat at the far end of the table, taking notes diligently, but I caught him glancing at me several times. Each time our eyes met, I looked away immediately, treating him with the same indifference he had shown me. When he raised his hand to ask a question about project timelines, I answered briefly and moved on without the warmth I showed other team members who asked similar questions. After work hours, most of the staff had left, but I stayed late reviewing proposals. This had become my routine, staying until the building was nearly empty, partly because I genuinely enjoyed the work, partly because going home to my expensive but empty apartment reminded me that success hadn't filled the void Coulson left. Around 8 o'clock, I finally packed my briefcase and headed to the parking garage. The garage was dimly lit and nearly deserted. I was walking toward my car when I heard footsteps echoing behind me. I knew who it was before turning around. Coulson stood about 10 feet away, his blazer draped over his arm, looking exhausted. "Kian, please, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I can't keep doing this." I pressed my key fob and my car beeped in response. "Doing what exactly?" My voice was flat, uninterested, pretending like we never meant anything to each other, pretending like I didn't destroy the best thing in my life. His voice cracked slightly. I turned to face him fully. "You made your choice 6 months ago, Coulson. You decided I wasn't worth your time, that I embarrassed you. Now I'm making my choice. You're not worth mine." His eyes glistened, but I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt too much and had learned to bury it so deep that it couldn't hurt me anymore. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I was shallow and stupid, and I threw away something real for something meaningless." I opened my car door. "That's your burden to carry, not mine. I have a morning meeting at 7. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, alone under the fluorescent lights, exactly how he had left me, abandoned and hurting. The difference was I had transformed my pain into power. What would he do with his? The first 2 weeks felt like walking through an invisible storm that only Coulson and I could sense. He was on my team, but between us existed an invisible barrier that seemed to thicken with each passing day. During meetings, he would look my way as if wanting to say something meaningful, but I maintained strict professionalism, minimal eye contact, interactions purely work-related. I never spent extra time with him, never engaged in casual conversation. Just work reports, deadlines, and project updates. But Coulson, he had changed. Where he was once arrogant and dismissive, he had become quiet and withdrawn. A shadow of guilt constantly hung over his face, like he was carrying a heavy weight that never lightened. In team meetings when I assigned projects, Coulson always showed extra effort submitting work before deadlines, as if trying to prove something. But I never acknowledged it beyond a simple adequate work before moving on. Treating him exactly as he once treated me. Other team members started noticing the tension. I could see them exchanging glances when Coulson spoke and I barely responded, or when he volunteered for difficult assignments and I assigned them to someone else without explanation. Marcus, My best friend who worked in the finance department cornered me by the coffee machine one afternoon. What's going on with you and the new guy? People are talking. I poured my coffee slowly. Nothing's going on. He's just another employee. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Kian, I've known you for 5 years. You're never cold to anyone. What did he do? I took a sip and walked away without answering. Some wounds were too personal to share, even with close friends. Today after work, as I headed toward my car, Coulson intercepted me in the parking lot. He had been trying to have a proper conversation for days, but I had consistently avoided it. Kian, please. Just hear me out once, he said, desperation clearly audible in his voice. I pulled out my car key without looking at him. Coulson, I'm running late. If this is official business, we can discuss it in the office tomorrow. I know I made a mistake, he suddenly said, desperation and frustration pouring from him, finally losing control. I know I hurt you, but I can't function without you. Seeing you every day in the office and watching your cold behavior, it's killing me, Kian. Hearing this, I closed my eyes. There was a time when I would have done anything to hear these words, would have sacrificed all my self-respect for them. But now they were just words, empty and meaningless, arriving far too late. I turned and looked at him with complete emotional detachment. You abandoned me when I needed your support, when I was breaking down without you. Now you need me, so why should I listen? Why should I give you the importance you never gave me? Pain flashed across Coulson's face, like every word struck him like a dagger. Because I still love you, Kian. I know how hollow that sounds, but it's true. My heart stopped for a second, but then I regained control. Love? Do you remember what you said to me? That I had no worth? That you weren't running a charity? That I didn't belong in your world? Now that I'm above you, now that I have position, suddenly you remember love. I unlocked my car and started getting in. Coulson grabbed the door, his grip tight. Kian, please, I'll prove it to you. Just give me one chance to show you I've changed. I looked at him with an ice-cold gaze, the kind that would tell him I wasn't the same Kian anymore. A chance? You think this is some game with a retry button? Coulson, you used me when it was convenient, then threw me away when you decided I didn't meet your standards. I don't want you anymore. I closed the door and drove away, watching his silhouette shrink in my rearview mirror. But when I reached home, my hands were trembling. Because the truth was that hearing Coulson's words, witnessing his desperation, my heart still ached from it. Did I still love him, or was this just an old wound that never properly healed, now torn open again? I stood by my apartment window, looking at the city lights, asking myself whether revenge was actually bringing me peace, or just creating more emptiness inside. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, hoping to avoid running into Coulson before the workday officially started. But when I walked past his cubicle, I saw him already there, typing intensely on his computer. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of something concern, sympathy, but I pushed it down and kept walking. Emily arrived at 8 sharp with my schedule. Sir, you have a department review meeting at 9, lunch with Director Chen at noon, and the quarterly presentation rehearsal at 3. I nodded, focusing on my tablet. Any issues I should know about? She hesitated. Well, Coulson Reed submitted his project proposal early. It's actually quite impressive, innovative approach, thorough research. Should I forward it to you? I kept my expression neutral. Treat it like any other submission. Standard review process. But after Emily left, I found myself pulling up his proposal anyway. She was right. It was excellent. Better than excellent. Actually, the analysis was sharp. The solutions creative, the presentation polished. This was the Coulson I remembered from college. The brilliant mind I had fallen for before money and status corrupted his values. I closed the file quickly, annoyed at myself for caring about the quality of his work, for feeling a flicker of pride in what he had accomplished. The department review meeting was tense. When it came time to discuss new proposals, I deliberately skipped over Coulson's, despite its quality, instead highlighting work from other team members. I saw his face fall, saw him shrink slightly in his chair, and I felt a dark satisfaction. But beneath that satisfaction was something uglier, the recognition that I was becoming someone I didn't entirely like, someone who used power to inflict pain just as it had been inflicted on me. During lunch with Director Chen, she brought up something unexpected. Kian, I've been impressed with your leadership, but I've also noticed tension with one of your new team members, Coulson Reed. I nearly choked on my water. I don't know what you mean. She smiled knowingly. I've been in this business 30 years. I recognize personal history when I see it. Whatever happened between you two, don't let it compromise your professional judgment. He's talented. Use that talent for the company's benefit, regardless of your feelings. Her words haunted me for the rest of the day. Was I letting personal revenge interfere with professional responsibility? Was I punishing Coulson at the expense of team productivity? That evening, instead of going straight home, I sat in my office long after everyone left, staring at Coulson's proposal on my screen. It deserved to be greenlit. It deserves recognition. But approving it meant acknowledging him, meant giving him something he wanted from me. Could I separate the professional from the personal? Did I even want to? The next morning I was reviewing quarterly projections in my office, when Emily knocked and entered with an unusual expression. "Sir, there's an update from HR," Emily said in her typical professional tone, though her eyes held a hint of hesitation. "Coulson Reed has submitted his resignation." My hand froze on my coffee cup. For a second it felt like time itself had stopped moving. "What?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily extended the file toward me. "Yes, sir. He's submitted formal resignation papers and requested to waive the notice period. If you approve, tomorrow will be his final day." A strange tightness gripped my chest. I had wanted Coulson gone, wanted him out of my life permanently. But now that he was actually leaving, truly disappearing, I felt like something was slipping away unfinished. Like closing a book before reading the last chapter. "Fine," I said, keeping my voice level as I signed the document. "Process his resignation." Emily nodded and left. But throughout the entire day my focus was scattered. During every report review, every presentation, my mind kept drifting back to Coulson, to his decision, to that parking lot conversation that now felt heavy with significance. Evening arrived and the office gradually emptied until only the cleaning staff remained. I found myself walking toward Coulson's cubicle. He was packing his belongings quietly, methodically, photo frames, notebooks, that small cactus plant he'd kept on his desk. His face showed no bitterness, just a peaceful acceptance, as if he'd made an important decision and finally found some measure of tranquility. "You're really leaving?" I asked, my voice lacking the coldness that had defined our interactions these past weeks. Coulson looked up at me, and for the first time in 2 weeks he smiled genuinely, a sad smile but an honest one. "Yes, Kian. I came here thinking that maybe being close to you, working alongside you, I could win you back, show you I'd changed. But I realized all I was doing was causing you more pain. You have to see me every single day, and that's torture for you." He picked up his bag and stood. "Kian, you never deserved what I did to you. What I did was unforgivable. I abandoned you when you needed support most. And that's the biggest mistake of my life. And I can't keep disrupting your peace. Can't keep inflicting more hurt." His eyes held genuine truth. His voice carried authentic regret. "Coulson," I started, but he continued. "I'm moving to California," he said. "There's a startup offering me a position, smaller role, less money, but it's honest work. Maybe there I can rebuild myself, become the person who deserves you. So that if we ever meet again, I can stand before you with my head held high and say I'm not that person who hurt you anymore." He placed his hand on my shoulder for just a second, and I could feel in his touch that warmth from our college days. "Take care, Kian. You deserve everything: happiness, success, love, everything. And if you ever need anything, any kind of help, I'm just one call away." Then he walked away. I stood there listening to him leave, the elevator doors closing, his footsteps fading into nothing, and then, my chest constricted painfully. Breathing became difficult. I had never imagined that watching Coulson leave would hurt this much. I had thought that revenge, seeing him struggle, would bring satisfaction. But this wasn't happiness. This was just emptiness. A hollow feeling that settled deep in my chest and wouldn't leave. I looked at his desk, now completely bare except for a single note that read, "Thank you for everything. See." I slipped the note into my pocket and headed back to my office. but sleep refused to come that night. I lay in my expensive bed in my luxury apartment, staring at the ceiling while memories played like a film I couldn't pause. The way Coulson used to laugh at my terrible jokes, how he'd bring me coffee during late-night study sessions, the gentleness in his eyes before wealth and status poisoned his perspective. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my window. The city sprawled below me, millions of lights representing millions of lives, and I wondered how many of them were lying awake struggling with similar questions. Had I become too hard? Had my quest for vindication transformed me into someone cruel? Director Chen's words echoed in my mind about not letting personal feelings compromise professional judgment. But this went deeper than professional. This was about who I wanted to be as a person. I pulled out Coulson's note and read it again. Thank you for everything. What was he thanking me for? For the cold treatment? For the rejection? Or was he thanking me for teaching him a lesson he needed to learn, even if it came through pain? The questions swirled endlessly and dawn arrived without answers. I showered, dressed in my most expensive suit, and went to the office early. But Coulson's empty cubicle felt like an accusation every time I walked past it. Emily brought me files throughout the morning, each interaction professional and efficient. Yet I could tell she sensed something was wrong. "Sir, should I arrange interviews for Coulson's replacement?" she asked around noon. I looked up from my computer screen, where I'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes without actually seeing it. "Not yet. Wait until next week." She nodded and left, and I returned to my unfocused staring. Lunch came and went. I couldn't eat. Marcus texted asking if I wanted to grab dinner, but I declined. The afternoon stretched endlessly. Meetings blurred together, and finally, mercifully, the workday ended. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying every interaction with Coulson, from that first devastating breakup to his quiet departure. Once home, I poured myself a drink I didn't actually want and sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. My phone buzzed with work emails, but I ignored them all. Instead, I found myself scrolling back through old photos I'd never quite managed to delete. Coulson and me at graduation, at concerts, at that little diner we used to frequent when we were both broke students. In every photo, we looked genuinely happy, completely unaware that money and status would eventually poison everything beautiful between us. I closed the Photos app and set my phone down. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt like I'd won a battle but lost something far more valuable in the process. Coulson had hurt me terribly. Yes, but watching him walk away today, seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes, recognizing that he'd actually learned and grown, it made me question everything. Was holding on to anger really protecting me, or was it just building walls that kept out any possibility of healing? The night deepened, stars appeared above the city lights, and I made a decision. Not tonight, not this week, but eventually I needed to figure out what I actually wanted. Did I want to stay bitter and alone in my successful life? Or did I want to take a risk on something that might hurt me again but could also be real? Coulson was gone, moved to California, and that gave me time. Time to think, to heal properly, to decide who I wanted to become. Tomorrow would bring more work, more responsibilities, more distractions. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, I finally admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding. I still had feelings for him, and that terrified me. 3 months passed, and my life continued advancing professionally while standing still emotionally. Promotions came my way, a corner office, a seat in executive meetings, recognition from company leadership. The HR director personally congratulated me on landing 3 major clients. Industry publications featured me in articles about young executives to watch. My bank account grew, my wardrobe improved, my apartment could have been featured in luxury lifestyle magazines. But at night, when I returned to that beautiful empty space, when city lights glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, memories of Coulson haunted me relentlessly. His genuine smile from college days, his voice during those late-night phone calls just to say he missed me. That final goodbye containing no bitterness, only regret and acceptance. I'd blocked him on social media, deleted his number, severed every visible connection, yet somehow he remained present in my thoughts, my dreams, the quiet moments between meetings and deadlines. Emily had started noticing my distraction during meetings. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked one afternoon after I'd skipped an entire slide during an important presentation. "Just tired," I lied, but the truth was my focus had deteriorated completely. This morning, while drinking coffee and checking emails, Emily brought me a courier envelope. "Sir, this arrived for you, from California," she said, placing it carefully on my desk. My heart immediately began racing. I picked up the envelope, handwritten address in Coulson's familiar script that I could have recognized anywhere. With trembling hands, I opened it and extracted a handwritten letter, pages folded with obvious care. "Kian, I know you've removed me from your life. Social media, phone, your entire world, and you have every right. But I can't stop myself from writing this because some things need to be said, whether they're heard or not. Here in California, working at this small startup, I've learned so much about myself, my mistakes, my misplaced priorities. I realized that what I did to you wasn't just wrong toward you, it was wrong toward myself. You taught me that love isn't about money or status, it comes from the heart, from commitment, but I was so blind in my superficial world that I couldn't see what mattered. You didn't leave me, Kian. I left you, and that's my life's greatest mistake, my deepest regret. Every single day here, when I work, when I meet people, I remember your smile when we'd meet in the college library. I remember your dedication when you worked 2 jobs but still made time for me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, because I know some things can't be fixed with apologies. I just wanted you to know, you were my greatest joy and my greatest regret. If you ever feel you can forgive me or if you think there's anything left between us, I'm here, waiting. Always yours, Coulson. My hands shook uncontrollably. I read the letter again, absorbing every carefully chosen word, feeling every emotion embedded in his handwriting. And then, understanding crashed over me, like a wave. These 3 months of moving on had been nothing but an elaborate facade. I didn't hate Coulson, I loved him, had always loved him, would probably always love him. But I'd been terrified of admitting it. Scared of vulnerability. Afraid that acknowledging these feelings would bring back the pain of his rejection. I picked up my phone and made an impulsive decision. One that might be reckless, might be foolish, but felt absolutely necessary. If I truly wanted to move forward with my life, I needed proper closure. Or maybe something more than closure, something I'd been denying existed. I booked a flight to California for tomorrow morning. I informed Emily I needed emergency leave. I packed a small bag and tried to sleep, but my mind raced with possibilities and fears in equal measure. The next morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater. Nothing corporate or intimidating. At the airport, I bought coffee I barely tasted and boarded the plane in a daze. During the flight, I rehearsed potential conversations, imagined various scenarios, questioned my sanity repeatedly. What if Coulson had moved on? What if the letter was just guilt talking? What if I was setting myself up for another devastating rejection? But beneath all the fear lived something stronger: hope. Fragile, tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, 2 broken people could find a way to heal together. When the plane landed in California, sunshine and warm air greeted me, so different from home. I took a cab to the address from Coulson's letter, watching unfamiliar streets pass by while my anxiety built with each block. The building was modest, located in a middle-class neighborhood, such a contrast to his former penthouse. I stood outside, staring up at the 3rd-floor windows, gathering courage. What was I doing here? Flying across the country to confront feelings I'd spent months denying. It seemed insane, yet I'd never felt more certain about anything. I entered the building, climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling monumental. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. I stood before his door, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For several seconds I simply stood there, frozen between past and future, between safety and risk. Then I raised my hand and pressed the doorbell. Footsteps approached, slow, cautious. The door opened and there he was. Coulson stood in the doorway wearing a simple hoodie and jeans, looking so different from the corporate executive I'd known. When he saw me, his eyes widened with complete shock, his face cycling through disbelief, confusion, hope, fear, every emotion flashing across his features in rapid succession. "Kian," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the moment. Am I dreaming?" The vulnerability in his voice, in his entire posture, was something I'd never witnessed before. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "No, Coulson, I'm really here." His face flooded with emotion, shock giving way to joy, giving way to guilt. Everything tangled together. Why did you come?" "I don't understand." His voice shook. I stepped closer to the threshold. "Because I want to forgive you. And maybe I need to forgive myself too." Tears welled in Coulson's eyes, which he tried desperately to control. "Kian, you don't need to forgive me. What I did," I interrupted him gently but firmly. "No, Coulson, I need this. You hurt me, that's true. But I hurt you too, with my coldness, my revenge, my bitterness. We both made mistakes, and these 3 months, I realized revenge wasn't bringing me peace. Every night I thought about you. Every success felt empty because you weren't there to share it." I extended my hand toward him. "But I want a fresh start. If you want that too, without past baggage, without revenge or guilt. Just us." Coulson stared at my outstretched hand, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. Then he took my hand, gripping it tightly as if he'd never let go, as if this were a dream that might evaporate at any moment. The touch sent electricity through me, familiar yet entirely new. "Kian, I'll never leave you again. I promise. Not this time. No matter what happens." His voice carried absolute conviction, and I believed him. Not because the past was erased, but because we'd both changed, both grown through pain into people capable of something deeper than what we'd had before. California mornings possessed a different quality: crisp air, clear skies, and an inexplicable sense of new possibilities. I had traced Coulson's address from his letter. A small apartment in a modest downtown neighborhood. Standing outside his building, my heart raced with a nervousness I hadn't felt since our very first date years ago. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step feeling weighted with significance. Outside apartment 3B, I paused, second-guessing everything. Was this a terrible mistake? Should I turn back? But then I remembered the emptiness of the past 3 months, the hollow victories, and I pressed the doorbell with determination. Footsteps approached slowly, cautiously. The door opened, revealing Coulson in casual clothes, such a stark contrast to the polished executive I'd known. When recognition hit him, his eyes went wide with absolute disbelief. "Kian?" His voice trembled with uncertainty. "This can't be real." The raw vulnerability in his expression told me everything I needed to know. I took a steadying breath. "It's real, Coulson. I'm standing right here." Emotions flooded his face, shock melting into joy, melting into guilt, all tangled together impossibly. "But why? I never expected. I don't understand." His voice broke slightly. I moved closer. "Because holding on to anger was destroying me. Because revenge feels empty. Because maybe we both deserve another chance." Tears began streaming down his face, which he didn't even try to hide anymore. "Kian, after everything I did, you don't owe me anything. I don't Stop," I said firmly. "You hurt me badly, yes, but I also hurt you with my coldness these past months. We both failed each other in different ways. These 3 months taught me that success means nothing without someone to share it with. That being right isn't the same as being happy." I extended my hand. "So I'm offering a clean slate. No past mistakes, no grudges. Just 2 people trying again. If that's what you want." Coulson stared at my hand, then took it in both of his, holding on like a lifeline. "I want nothing more," he whispered. "I've wanted nothing else since I left." Then he pulled me into an embrace, and I held him back tightly, both of us releasing months of pent-up emotion. In that moment, something fundamental shifted. Old wounds beginning their slow transformation into scars. Painful but no longer bleeding. We went to a small cafe nearby. Coulson's new favorite place. Nothing like the expensive restaurants we'd frequented before. Over simple coffee, we talked for hours, sharing everything. Coulson told me about his startup job, how humbling it had been starting from the bottom again, learning actual humility instead of just performing it. Working here changed my perspective entirely, he explained, cradling his coffee cup. I used to measure worth in dollars and status. Now I understand that real value comes from integrity, from treating people with respect regardless of their circumstances. I shared my own journey, the professional successes that felt empty, the nights spent questioning who I was becoming, the realization that punishing him was also punishing myself. Director Chen told me not to let personal feelings compromise my professional judgment. I admit it, but the truth is my personal feelings were already compromising everything else. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep, couldn't find satisfaction in achievements because part of me was still stuck in that moment you walked away. Coulson reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so sorry I put you through that. If I could go back. I squeezed his hand gently. We can't go back. But maybe we can go forward differently. We spent the afternoon walking through neighborhoods, talking about future possibilities instead of past failures. Coulson showed me his modest apartment, his workspace at the startup, the simple life he'd built. Everything about it was authentic in a way his previous lifestyle never was. That evening, we stood on his small balcony watching the sunset paint the California sky in brilliant colors. I never thought I'd see you again, Coulson said quietly. After I left, I convinced myself it was over permanently. That you'd moved on, found someone better, forgotten about me entirely. I turned to face him directly. I tried to forget, deleted your number, blocked you everywhere, avoided every reminder, but you can't delete feelings like files on a computer. They stay, whether you acknowledge them or not. Coulson's eyes searched mine. So what happens now? You live in one city. I live in another. Your career is thriving. Mine is starting over. How do we make this work? I considered the question carefully. Honestly, I don't have all the answers. Long distance will be difficult. Our lives are in different places literally and figuratively. But I know that walking away from you again without even trying would haunt me forever. So we figure it out. One day, one challenge at a time. He smiled. That genuine smile I remembered from college. You always were the practical one. I laughed softly. Someone had to be. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching day transition to night. Then Coulson spoke again, his voice serious. Kian, I need you to understand something. I'm not that person anymore. The one who valued appearances over substance, who let money corrupt his values. But I'm also not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, probably different ones, but mistakes nonetheless. Can you accept that? I met his gaze steadily. I'm not perfect either. I can be cold when I'm hurt, vindictive when I feel wronged. These past months proved that clearly. But yes, I can accept your imperfections if you can accept mine. Coulson pulled me closer. I can definitely do that. Then he kissed me, and it felt both familiar and completely new, carrying the weight of our history but also the lightness of genuine forgiveness. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were smiling. We spent that night talking until dawn, sharing dreams and fears, making tentative plans. I would return home tomorrow but visit regularly. We'd video call daily, stay connected however possible. Eventually one of us might relocate, but that decision could wait until we'd rebuilt trust and confidence in us. No pressure, I said. We take this slow, rebuild properly. No rushing into grand gestures or unrealistic promises. Coulson nodded. Slow sounds perfect. We tried fast before and it fell apart. Maybe slow will be our saving grace. As morning light began filtering through the windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine peace, not the false contentment of professional success, not the hollow satisfaction of revenge, but real peace that comes from choosing vulnerability over safety, from choosing connection over pride. When I finally left to catch my flight home, Coulson walked me to the cab. Thank you, he said, for being brave enough to come here, to give us another chance. I touched his face gently. Thank you for becoming someone worth taking that chance on. The cab pulled away and I watched him standing there until he disappeared from view. On the flight home, I slept deeply for the first time in months. Back at work, Emily noticed the change immediately. You seem different, sir. More relaxed. I smiled. Just got some things sorted out. She didn't press for details, but I could tell she was relieved. The following weeks brought their own challenges. Missing Coulson, coordinating schedules across time zones, navigating the vulnerability of rebuilding trust. But for the first time since he'd walked out of my life, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of running from it. Our story wasn't ending. It was finally truly beginning. Not with the naive certainty of our college days, but with the hard-won wisdom of people who'd hurt each other and chosen to heal anyway, together.